يلا يلا يا سلامتين يلا
ما صابك يلا
مسكتك يلا الضرب الثاني براسك كفي لك كفي الله يوفقك كفي الله لا يوفقك كفي ترفع الله ليش انتو
عبطنك لا
I had a better one. I gave you better footage than that. I'll get you in a second. Jack, blood chaos. People are worried, even supporters of Israel, that we're getting sucked in here very, very quickly. Turkey is making a major move to reestablish a caliphate. To do that, they must take over the two holy sites in Mecca and Medina. They got to reverse what happened in World War I with Lawrence of Arabia and the British Army, General Allenby. You got Qatar, who's underwriting the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood has not been designated a terrorist organization by the United States. They're on a roll. You've got Persia is very close to a nuclear weapon. Everybody warned, John Kerry and all our betters about this, and of course now it's about to happen on President Trump's watch. He's in the middle of that. Plus you got Ukraine. Ukraine's getting pounded as the Russians see a possibility here before any kind of rapprochement. That arc of instability from Kursk all the way down to the Red Sea, oh, by the way, where we have two carrier battle groups taking incoming from Houthis. How does Trump unwind this? Because this could overwhelm everything he's trying to do in his second term, sir.
Well, Steve, there's a lot. And I would just add to that, again, we still have those 2,000 American soldiers that are on the ground in Syria right now in a war that we should not be part of. You've got a civil war breaking out. You've got a state that is in complete collapse. So these are, by the way, some of these forces that are clashing now. So the Islamists that have taken over are now fighting with the remnants of the Assad regime. So you've got Syrian Arab Army up there. You've got Alawites who still have a couple of brigades. They're calling themselves the Coastal Shield Brigade, the Popular Resistance Front, Islamic resistance, et cetera, et cetera. So they're trying to protect the Alawites. Meanwhile, what the Islamist government is coming down under Jolani is saying they're going to come in, and not only are they going to fight the brigades, but they're going to go in and kill your family. They're going to kill the women. They're killing the children. And I've seen videos just this morning, Steve. I've seen videos just this morning of entire families sitting in their living rooms just slaughtered, absolutely slaughtered by the head choppers that, again, were empowered by the CIA, that were empowered by the Biden administration, that were empowered by the Obama administration, and so many others. So this is the side that we've been backing. I just want to be clear about that. So for all the people who say, hey, whoa, what about America first? I'm telling you, this is what your tax dollars have been going, USAID and all the rest, this is what your tax dollars have been paying for. So go watch these videos. Go watch it. That's what your government was sending your money to. That's where, and when Doge comes out with their cuts, and when OMB comes out, when the budgetary process goes forward, this is what your money was funding. This is what your government was funding prior to President Trump getting on board. All right? So let's be clear about that. Second, you've got these troops, our troops, the sons and daughters of MAGA, that are in the midst of the blood chaos. Because what happens next? What happens when Shia militias try to cross from Iraq into Syria because they want to go help the Alawites? What happens when Hezbollah gets activated? What happens when any of these groups get activated? Or, Steve, as you say, if the Iranians do decide to go nuclear, and by the way, when they keep saying they're about to produce a nuclear weapon, look, there's a lot of reporting out there. There's a lot of assessments that are on the shelf right now that say Iran actually already has nuclear weapons. They're just choosing not to reveal them yet. Why? Because they keep getting paid off by the West to not make the nuclear weapons. But you really want to put all your money on the fact that Iran doesn't have a couple of hot ones already, with working with AQCOM, working with the network that the Pakistanis and all the rest? No, let's just be a little careful with that. Let's be a little careful with that. So I'm not going to put money on the fact that they don't have a couple of hot ones. So what does this mean? What President Trump can do is turn down the instability. Number one, reduce the price of a barrel of oil. The minute you reduce that, which President Trump saw it in his first term by putting U.S. LNG and U.S. oil out on the global market, boom, you undercut everything that the war machines are doing in this part of the world. You also work forward, and then you push what? The peace deals. You push the peace deals going forward. You mean to tell me that Erdogan's NATO member? Turkey is a NATO member, so NATO is backing what's happening that's going on right now every single second that Erdogan and Turkey remain NATO members. So you want to put pressure on him? You put all the pressure on. We're putting pressure on Germany right now, putting pressure on the UK and Keir Starmer right now. Where's the pressure on Erdogan? So President Trump can use the exact same pressure points that he's using vis-a-vis NATO in Europe that he can use on Erdogan. We've got a couple, maybe like 1,000 or so troops in Turkey as well on our bases or joint bases that we control with the Turks. So you come on down and look, we can pull the plugs on all this. And thirdly, by the way, this new government, this new regime in Syria is saying we got to take off the sanctions. We want full diplomatic recognition. We know all the rest of this. Why would you recognize a government that's doing this to their own people? Why would you recognize a government that's in the free flow of blood in the streets? So you withhold the diplomatic recognition. You withhold all the rest. That's why he's meeting with the UN. That's why he's doing all this. He wants that recognition. He wants to be seen as the legitimate leader of Syria while he's going and they're chopping heads off in every single one of these Christian and Alawite villages up there in the Northwest. No, it's an absolute joke. It's insanity. President Trump has the team around him. And a team, by the way, which includes DNI Tulsi Gabbard, who specifically said this is what would happen. That's the team that I trust to be able to put this to bed.
By the way, the new chief of staff of the IDF, because they thought the previous guy, although he took out Hezbollah, wasn't tough enough. The new chief of staff of IDF says 2025 is the year of war. And let me list it off. He's going to go back and redeploy into Gaza and wipe out Hamas. This is what he's saying. He's going to Judea, Samaria, and wipe out Hamas. He's going to go to Syria and back to Druze and get at least part of southern Syria as a buffer zone and maybe incorporate the Druze into Israel. They're going to go back to Lebanon and clean up anything Hezbollah they've left behind. And the big event they're planning for is either an air or land strike into Persia to take out the nuclear facilities. This one, we're going to get sucked in here pretty quickly. Jack Posobiec, unless President Trump really starts banging heads. I mean, this is as dangerous as ever been, and that's not even talking about Ukraine or the South China Sea. Walk me through this.
Steve, there is such an appetite in Washington, D.C., in this town for war with Iran. And people say, oh, let's go to war with Iran. Let's get our troops in there. Let's get our proxy forces in there. The same way that the Ukraine war has turned. It was the same people, by the way, who said that it would be a great idea to back the Ukrainians in a war against Russia, with that turning into the quagmire and that turning into the meat grinder it is. They say, oh, look, we knocked off Saddam so easy. We knocked off Assad finally. We knocked off Libya. So what these people do, they never sit back and actually think about the secondary and tertiary consequences of their decisions. They just move on to the next one. Let's do regime change here. Let's do regime change there. But what they're missing is, number one, as you correctly point out, Iran may have nuclear weapons already. Iran likely is close to at least developing nuclear weapons. And third, Iran is not some country like Iraq. They have a serious air force. They have an incredibly mountainous territory and terrain. They have a serious military. They have two serious militaries, by the way. This is the country that can inflict serious, absolutely serious damage on U.S. interests and U.S. allies in the region. Sure. And people who are plus they've got the allies like China and Russia. This is how you turn BRICS in on itself. Yep. But what's President Trump looking at? He's going around the back in terms of all of this. Why is he talking about normalizing relations with the Russians? Because he knows that the Russians can put more pressure on Iran than we can economically. He knows the Russians can put more pressure on the Chinese than we can. He knows the Russians have the ability to do that. That's why he's trying to rebalance. It's not a justification of Russia. It's an understanding of great power politics and a new understanding, which is actually an old understanding that used to be the way Rapprochement, Kissinger, Nixon. This is the way that the old way that we looked at the world, not the Douglas Murray version of we're going to uphold global norms and knock off any regime that we don't like. It's an understanding of where the chessboard is and that we can't be focused on all this. Look, Steve, every minute that we spend focused on the Middle East, that's a minute that China is arming the South China Sea. They're militarizing these islands. They're pushing out beyond the first island chain. They're doing everything else they can. Why? Because they've got a completely free hand to do so in the 7th Fleet AOR, while we're totally bogged down in Eurasia and the Middle East. Look, this is Russia's backyard. If we're going to have a peace deal with the Russians, why not work with them to establish stability here?
Yeah. The rapprochement. You bring a great point. If you ever talk to these guys, like it's easy to start wars, it's hard to finish them. Iraq, disaster. 15 years, $7 trillion, thousands dead, tens of thousands wounded, PTSD, suicides. Afghanistan, 20 years, $2 trillion. And by the way, we leave both of these essentially in defeat. In Ukraine, same situation. And now you got Persia on the table. And hey, there's a huge lobby. And it's not just the Israelis. You got the war machine lobby is pushing, the neocon lobby is pushing for this, is pushing for a war. Talk to me about Ukraine. You got the Ukrainians to try to balance things out, at least try to get to the negotiating table, actually drove to Kursk, the site of the largest tank battle in world history in World War II. They actually were very successful for a while. But it's almost like Stalingrad now. The Russians have encircled the remaining troops up there in Ukraine or close to it, and they're going to essentially hold them hostage.
The Russians are pushing it in Kursk. This is recognized, internationally recognized Russian territory in Kursk. Obviously, since the World War II period, this is something that's not a disputed territory. The Russians are going to push in and encircle that as soon as they want to, and they're also, by the way, pushing forward in Donbass. While Putin has got his eye still firmly focused on Odessa and even further to the west.